years ago. We meet our hero immediately. His name is Elder Son. Okay? He's in part of a retinue with his father, who's the chieftain of a clan, and his younger brother. They're riding horseback through treacherous mountain passes and through unbridged rivers so they can get to another territory of one of the other clan lords. The purpose of this journey is alliance through marriage. The lord of the other clan has one child, a maiden, and this king, chieftain, has the two sons. The complication of the story comes in immediately. For some reason, we're not told why. The father is afraid of the elder son and favors the younger son. All we see is that occasionally the elder son asks questions and the younger son obeys quietly. And so perhaps the father thought that there was some kind of threat or some kind of challenge in the questions that the elder son was asking. But that always makes for those juicy sibling rivalries. There has to be a parent siding with one of the siblings. As the retinue approaches, the retinue arrives at the fort of the other clan, and they go through the regular court pleasantries. And the two sons are introduced to the daughter, and she's lovely and demure, so they're immediately smitten by her. And so then they're presented to the lord of that clan, and he says to them, he says this: "I'm not impressed by things of the world. I'm not impressed by power. What impresses me and what I love the most is truth." That's what he says. But we see that he doesn't have the truth. He knows something about it, but he doesn't have it. And so what he then adds is, what I need is the touchstone, because in the light of the touchstone, there I will find the truth. Now, for some reason, the elder son is quite taken by this. I don't know, is it youthful brashness? Is it sometimes you get that sudden impulse to make a decision, you're not sure why? Was it divine guidance? Some kind of conviction that he suddenly felt. And so he says, "Father." He calls the chieftain of the other clan father. Well, that's not lost on his own father. Okay? He says, my God, he called him father. And then he adds, "I was so impressed by what you said that whether I marry this maiden or not, out of love of your wisdom, I will seek the touchstone to the ends of the earth." And he goes on that particular quest. So he's going off on the quest, and his own father has given him no yeoman to accompany him. He's given him no gear to take along with him. He's basically now on his own. And remember, this is a folk tale. This isn't a fairy tale. So this individual has no special powers. He's got no special intercessor who's going to come in and save him at the last minute. He's basically on his own. Well, as he's taking off, the father and the younger son collude together. Why don't we trick the other king into believing that we have the touchstone? So they go back to their place, and they have a mirror in their treasury. So they bring the mirror back to the king of the second clan, and they show him his image in the mirror. Okay? Now what he had actually said before is, "In the touchstone, seams go away and being appears." So he looks in the mirror, and he sees himself garbed as a king. He sees around the room behind him all the trappings of royalty. And so he said, I had misgivings about myself, but no, not. I am a king. Look, it's right here. There is being in this. This must be the touchstone. So from that, the young son is able to marry the bride, and the two clans merge together. We're never told exactly how long the elder son is off on his quest. But everywhere he goes, he asks people if they have the touchstone. And the teller of the story says, everybody believes they have the touchstone. Okay, so now remember, this is a folk tale. What is the touchstone? Folk tales talk about the symbols of the clan or the tribe, the inner meanings that drive that particular group of people to want to band together and to pursue different things in their life. And obviously the elder son isn't pursuing what he could have. As the elder son, he should have been entitled to become king next. And instead he goes off on a different path. Well, everywhere he goes, he asks if people have the touchstone. People said, well, yes, we have the touchstone. And he always asks to see it, and he always asks for it. So as he's traveling along, yes, I do love props, his wallet becomes filled with touchstones. Now, these are just river rocks from the American River. Please don't tell the people there that I take these. And he has them in all different colors, and they all have a certain radiance about them. And what we are told, we're not told if he has any kind of religious convictions that keep him going, that help him not lose his resolve, but we do hear that every once in a while he takes the stones out, and it causes his mind to spin like the sails of a windmill. What do you suppose that means? I think somehow it gets him high and puts him into a different state of being than one's being normally is. And that's all we know, but he gets the opportunity by going on this quest, by going on this different path than was originally allotted for him, to meet all kind of different people and to have all kind of different experiences. We can read into the story along with Robert Louis Stevenson and say, well, he must have gone to roadhouses, he must have gone to monasteries, he must have gone to fairs, he must have visited farmers, and because he was a noble himself, he had the passport to go in and talk to the various courts to find out from people, well, what is the touchstone? All right. So, at one point, he loses resolve and he wants to go back and claim what's his. Of course, I guess he's long since forgotten that those options probably are gone. And he's basically kind of desperate at this point. He spent a lot of years on this quest, and seemingly he has nothing for it. So basically, right before he's ready to give up, he finds himself on one of the rugged coasts of Scotland. And the coast is being savaged by wind and rain and tides in the nighttime. And he sees in the distance along the cliffs this small cabin with a very dim light in the cabin. And he works his way up to the cabin, opens the door, and inside there's an old man sitting at the table. And he goes towards the table and sits down with the old man. The old man looks up and says, "My candle is about to go out. Your quest is at an end." He reaches over, he reaches over and he hands our hero a pebble. Exhales, the candle goes out. So, this is very dramatic. But our hero looks at this pebble. He says, "My quest is at an end." He's not impressed by it. He's skeptical because this is so common. You can find these anywhere and it's colorless, not like the other touchstones he had. So he puts it in his bag with the other touchstones, and he goes off into the night. But somehow, after a while, the drama of that scene in the cabin sifts in him and causes something to be unsettled. And so he takes the stones out again, and he sees that this stone is now brighter than the others, but the other stones don't lose their light. And he says, can this be the truth, that in the presence of this stones, all the others still have their light? That somehow each of us still carry a light that becomes part of the larger light, I think is what he's saying. And so he takes it and he turns it up to the nighttime sky, and the stars become brighter than they were before. And he points it at the hills, which are dark in the distance. But through the touchstone, he can see how much life is in the hills, and he feels that life beginning to abound in himself. He puts the touchstone down towards the earth between his feet, and he sees all the wonder and horror of this world. And then you know what he does? He has the courage to turn the stone on himself. We're not told what he sees. All we know that he does is that he kneels and prays. Well, I think that what he saw was his being, and that his being in relationship to the rest of the world was very small, but it was an essential part of the world. Now, I would have been happy if the story ended there. But in fables and these special stories that all tribes and communities have, the hero always has to go back to the community, to the ordinary life, and he's compelled to go back. Well, what's he find when he gets there? He goes into the court, and his younger brother is now sitting on the throne. The two kings have died. He's now the king. And who's sitting next to him on the throne? The maiden, now his queen. And the brother sees him, doesn't recognize him, and says, "Who are you?" And so he says, "Well, I'm your elder brother, back from my quest." And he says, "What a fool you've been. You went out on your quest for the touchstone, and all along we had it right here." And the brother's puzzled. And he said what he said to everybody that he saw on his quest, "Show me your touchstone." And so the brother pulls out the mirror, and he stands in front of the mirror. The elder brother is standing in front of the mirror. And he sees how old he's gotten at this point. And he weeps and said, "I've lost my life." Now here's somebody who's just had this incredible vision of the fact that he has a being in the face of the universe. And now he's saying, "My God, I've lost my life." Somehow he turns the touchstone back on himself, and he's reminded of those experiences that he's had. And he's so curious he has to turn the touchstone back on his brother, because the brother has then said, "You should have stayed here because I have all that you would have had. I've had a life of pleasure, happiness, and virtue." So he holds the touchstone up to the brother and sees that the horror of it. The brother's soul has shrunk to the size of a pea within him. He lives in fear. His mind is like a bag of scorpions. He's just a mask of a man. There's nothing left. And so he's now reminded of his relationship with everything else, and that somehow his brother and the maid still have some light about them. And he announces, he said, "Now I will go back. I will again go forth into the world." And he leaves this strange blessing to them. Sorry. "Fare ye all as well as ye may. Fare ye all as well as ye may. Children, whom would ye rather be, the elder or younger brother?"